Hello, we're in Melbourne. We've obviously got the iconic MCG in the background, where the final of this year's T20 World Cup is due to be played later on today. It's going to be a very special day for women's cricket. As a historian, I'm quite excited. Do you think we're going to see that world record broken today, Sid?
Well, I think it is going to be a little bit touch and go about the world record. They set themselves quite a task. They need to sell pretty much every ticket in order to actually break that record. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure it really matters. You know, if they only get 88,000, it will still be an absolutely enormous crowd. It will be a fantastic atmosphere. It will be basically full. It's still going to be awesome.
Yeah, definitely. We've heard that 75,000 pre-tickets have been sold. That was the last official number, but it sounds like they're now expecting between 80 and 90,000 at least. So it's just whether they get over the edge that last little bit. But as you say, does it really matter? And we're just super excited to be here, basically. So we had a look at the bookies' favourites, didn't we? And who are the bookies' favourites, Sid?
Well, I'm afraid it's not India.
And do you think that's right, that Australia are the clear favourites today? Do you think that we're going to see another Australian win?
I think we probably are. I think, you know, the bookies know where their money is. They know where their wallets are. And I think we probably will see an Australian win. You'd have to say that, you know, they've got the pedigree and the power to, you know, sort of cruise through this. It's true that they haven't been on the top of their form really at all in this tournament. You know, they've had a couple of very close shaves. They've had a scare against a minnow, but at the end of the day they've come through them all, and I can see them powering to a win here, kind of as they did in the semi-final really at the end of the day. Although it looked close on paper and South Africa ran them into that last over, you know, the power and the length of their batting lineup just kind of is just going to steamroller everybody else, and I'm afraid that's what's going to happen to India today. What do you think, Raf?
Well, I'm afraid I disagree. I'm backing India all the way. I think that they've had a brilliant tournament so far. They've been playing much better cricket than Australia. They've looked much more convincing in pretty much all their games. And unlike Australia, they are unbeaten in this tournament. They beat Australia a couple of weeks ago right at the start of this tournament. I think that it's their time. We're seeing in press conferences Harmanpreet Kaur looks much more relaxed, much more confident in her cricket and her captaincy. She obviously hasn't had that big innings this tournament, but she still seems very confident and relaxed, and maybe we'll see that big innings from her today.
Well, yeah, no, she's you know, her regulations are that she has one big innings per tournament almost, isn't it? And that hasn't quite come. So yeah, certainly it wouldn't surprise anybody if she were to pull it off today. You know, we've seen her do it before. We will see her do it again in the future. Today could be that day.
And Shafali Verma, obviously at the top of the Indian order, absolutely tonked all the Australian bowlers around the park in their group stage match. And do you think we might see her doing the same again today, Sid?
Well, she's on a different level, isn't she? I was watching her and Harmanpreet batting next to each other in the nets yesterday, and Harmanpreet, who, you know, we saw hit that astonishing innings at Derby, was, you know, every time the ball came out of Harmanpreet's bat, it was like, and every time the ball came out of Shafali's bat, it was like a bullet had gone off. It was a huge noise. She just hits the ball so hard. I've never heard a sound like that from anybody batting in the nets. So she's in a different league to everybody else, and you know, we could be seeing that ball sailing over the boundary from her, and that's the kind of thing that India need if they're going to win this match. They need her to really set things up for them, and if she can get them off to one of those starts where she hits, you know, 40 or 50 off 20 or 25, 30 balls, then go India.
Yeah, I just think that Australia haven't been particularly convincing this tournament, and that they've been helped by quite a bit of luck. The luck with Sri Lanka not using DRS very well, the luck with getting that semi-final actually played. They didn't look massively convincing at the beginning of the tournament, obviously losing to India, but have they particularly improved since? Well, they nearly lost to New Zealand, and then that would have seen them out potentially. So, yeah, if any time is going to see Australia beaten in a World Cup final, I'd say it's now, personally. The other thing, of course, is they're missing Elise Perry. They were missing her for the semi-final as well. We know that she's going to be out of cricket for 6 months. We obviously wish her all the best, but that is going to be a bit of a blow. She's kind of talismanic for Australia, isn't she?
Yeah, and if there's a weak link in Australia's team, it's their bowling. Their bowling hasn't been great this tournament overall. We've seen a few Megan Shoot classics in terms of great balls, but we haven't seen any great bowling performances overall. So I think they will miss perhaps Elise more with the ball almost than with the bat, where they have the length of the lineup to kind of to shrug off her being missing.
And they brought in Sophie Molyneux for the semi-final. Do you think that Australia will stick with the same lineup today as they had for that semi?
Yeah, you've got to think that that's going to be the case, haven't you? That it'll probably be Molly Strano that misses out alongside Annabelle Sutherland, and they'll keep that same lineup. That would be my feeling. But who knows? They've changed things around a lot over the course of the last 2 months. We've seen a lot of different Australia teams, so maybe they will spring that surprise. If there is a surprise, I would guess it would be Sutherland coming in, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, that would be asking a lot of quite a young player, wouldn't it? But that does seem to be the Australian way to throw people into the deep end, so we will see indeed. And the other important question is going to be who copes best with what is going to be a very big crowd that neither of these teams will ever have seen anything like before.
Yeah, at the end of the day, there's only going to be one person on the pitch today that's not going to be faced by that crowd, and that's going to be Katy Perry. She's played plenty of times in front of crowds like this, but for everybody else on that pitch, no one would have played under anything like these conditions. It's true that the Indians played at Lords in that World Cup final. We had 30,000 people at Lords that day, or nearly 30,000, but 80,000 or even more is just a different order of magnitude. We've spoken to people that have been around when these games have been played in the men's game here, and you just can't hear yourself think at that. There really is at Lords during the final. You could still hear calls. If you were on the boundary, if it wasn't like perhaps in the last few balls, the crowd were like roaring Anya in. But before that, you could still, for instance, hear calls. You could hear cries of catch it and things like that. Whereas when there's 80,000 people there, you don't hear a thing. It's intimidating conditions when the ball goes up in the air and you're underneath it, and suddenly 80,000 people are roaring at you. There might be 80,000 people roaring you to catch it. There might be 80,000 people roaring at you not to. But it's still a huge challenge to kind of overcome that wall of sound coming at you. So.
Yeah, I think if I was the captain of either of these teams and I won the toss, I'd be tempted to bat first, purely to try and get some of your players actually used to that wall of noise, maybe get them a little bit more accustomed to it before throwing them in at the deep end in the field and then ending up in that situation where potentially a drop catch is on the line. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. As we said, we're really excited and hope you are too.